All of your non-lethal self-defense supplies. Pepperspray.com carries one of the largest assortments of pepper spray and personal safety products on the web. From big to small, we have it all. Pepper spray, mace, animal repellent, $99.88 today.
Roger Masters is our guest. A lot of his material is published online. He's a top academic and professor at Dartmouth School of Government, Department of Government, with an Nelson A. Rockefeller Professor of Government chair, basically. And he was under the head honcho of the neocons, Leo Strauss. Before he leaves us, I'll get him to diverge and get a little bit into that. But he got into researching what is fluoride, what are the different types of fluoride, why is it being put in the water. We now have all these studies from all over the world, what it does, and boy, it is not pretty. But he doesn't even want to get into that issue. He just wants to get into why it was put there. And so, but please continue. You've gotten up to the German atomic program.
I want to get through why it was put there and focus on what it does. I want to spend most of this time on what it does. I want to explain, though, that the start of putting any fluoride in water was super secret because the Manhattan Project had a problem in the 1940s. They didn't want anybody to know how far advanced we were in making a bomb. And we only had very poor level of a supply of uranium in the United States. It's in rocks, in kind of granite rocks that you have to break down and grind up and then put an acid in to separate the various elements. And so it's a little bit complicated to get the uranium out compared to what Hitler had in Czechoslovakia. And the consequence of that is that you had a waste product that was a very powerful acid. And the scientist who was responsible for the machinery to separate out that toxic acid from the sludge, a man named Byron Copeland, chemical engineer, brilliant chemical engineer. When he heard that I was doing work on how lead and manganese caused crime or is associated with crime, he got in touch and said, "Do I know anything about silicofluorides?" I said, "I didn't know anything. I'd never even heard of them." And so I did all the work with him. This is all a research project that comes from somebody else telling me, "Oh, I wasn't paying attention to something important." And he knew about that because he was a chemical engineer involved in the whole process. And so everything I say is the result of what two people have done. That is, I've been working with somebody else. And I should tell you one thing. Mike is the kind of scientist who isn't afraid of saying, we're on a phone call like this, and he'll say, "Hey, Roger, shut up and listen to me, because I've made a mistake in chemistry. And I make mistakes in chemistry. I rely on him." Science is about being able to engage in a discussion. And so you should stop me anytime when I get into the facts of the case that I've discovered and say, well, what do I mean, or why about what, and so forth. Still, the big thing is that because putting fluoride in water had to be secret, so people in Germany or Japan didn't know how much uranium we were processing, everybody talked about putting fluoride in water. And the Manhattan Project started by putting putting sodium fluoride, which is the simple thing we have in toothpaste, in a couple of places. They compared two towns in New York, and there was no problem. And once they got it approved, they switched. And then they could dump fluosilicic acid into a water supply because they were assuming that it would dissolve or dissociate into its elements. And since they assumed, literally, the approval was based on an assumption that all of the fluoride would come off the molecule without any reference to the rest of the molecule.
Now, let's be specific. You can have all the secret operations you want, but if you've got, so many thousand drums of this byproduct at this plant, the Germans can come take photographs of it, observe it, and then know how much of the isotopes you need that you're able to extract. So they, quote, secretly start dumping it in the water. And then at the end of the war, they've got to get rid of the toxic waste. So they just say, it's nutritious. We'll be right back with our guest in just 70 seconds. Stay with us.
Thank you for listening to GCN.
so many thousand drums of this byproduct at this plant, the Germans can come take photographs of it, observe it, and then know how much of the isotopes you need that you're able to extract. So they, quote, secretly start dumping it in the water, and then at the end of the war, they've got to get rid of the toxic waste. So they just say, oh, it's nutritious. We'll be right back with our guest in just 70 seconds. Stay with us.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
In the near future, Earth is dominated by a powerful world government.
It's known as the Bilderberg Group. Could their objective be world domination?
For thousands of years, their dark order grew. Now, as they hail the birth of the New World Order, their great dream of exterminating 80% of humanity is at hand. For the first time in history, the elites plan for
corruption. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
We're about to get to the key of this interview, and that is the name fluoride blurring the whole debate. When we're not talking about fluoride, and as my guest was saying during the break to me, he said, look, it's not true. There hasn't been a lot of studies of what's actually being put in the water. There's been studies of sodium fluoride alone. He's actually absolutely right. The studies show that sodium fluoride alone, and he could differ, but the studies show increases in bone cancers in males, calcification of glands. But then he's going to come back and say, well, those are studies calling it fluoride, but it's really this other chemical compound that's a mixture of fluoride and other things. So, really one of the world experts on this with the top chemist he's been working with. Please continue, sir. Let's get right into it.
Okay, well, look, let me start explaining things very simply. This silicofluoride, which breaks down, first of all, it has the effect, which is very big, of increasing the amount of lead that a child will absorb if he's living in an old house with lead paint or any place in the environment where there's lead. So we did some studies in places where there was evidence of children's blood level by the community where they lived. 3 big samples, one in Massachusetts by county, one in New York State by county, and then the National Health and Nutrition Evaluation Survey is a 3rd study. And 3 different big, huge samples, one of 400,000 kids, and you just do statistical analysis. Okay, what's the average level or percent of kids, for instance, who have more than what was the conventional level of danger, which is 10 micrograms per deciliter? That is, how many kids have high blood lead, or what's the average blood lead? And what we found is that where there's silicofluoride in the water, taking everything into consideration, like economics and race and everything else, where there's silicofluoride in the water, there's more lead in the kids. And it's partly because silicon is a complicated atom that combines with a lot of other things, and the chemistry of that's not my business. What my business is the effects of it. And all the statistics involve taking lots of things into consideration. And what we then found was that, where there's pollution with lead, if there's also silicofluorides in the water compared to where there's pollution with lead and no silicofluoride, where there's lead and silicofluoride, that adds another, roughly speaking, another 100 or 150 violent crimes for every 100,000 people drinking the water.
Amazing. Now, interviewing chemists and doctors on this subject, they describe fluoride and the different variants of it. That's why Prozac's made out of it and so many other things as amazing, because it's electrically basically charged, and it just binds to everything. It goes through everything. It's really an active, volatile thing, to put that in dumbed-down layman's terms. Is that accurate?
My concern is not with the fluoride. It's with this other chemical, and the point is that this other chemical, silicofluorides, When you put them in water, the German study by Westendorf in 1975 was the only major study in the literature, and it showed it had big effects on brain chemistry.
Okay, so separately, okay, we keep calling it fluoride, but there's a different family of different compounds. What are they putting in the water in the cities?
Over 90% of water fluoridation uses one of these two silicofluorides, either flowsulfuric acid, which is a liquid, or sodium silicofluoride, which is a very closely resembles it, but it's solid and it's in petals, in little